we are continuing our travel days series, and I'm going to be working on a hot press watercolor paper, and I have here some acrylic paints, the Charbon, and then some acrylic gouache. And I have been really drawn to doing these kind of cafe scenes. So there's no better place for us to travel today than to Paris. I think I could do an entire class on this, and maybe I will. Maybe I'll do a mini class on it. Let me know if that's something you want in the comments. But I wanted to do kind of an illustrative drawing, illustrative painting, really, really quick kind of sketch. I don't want this to look very realistic. I want this to kind of have a little bit of character, kind of have a more illustrative feel to it. So I'm going to come in. I love drawing, not with just a pencil or Stabilo, but I actually really like drawing with colored pencils, and especially people. I like to start with like a warm colored pencil because it's really easy to paint over, and you start to see some of the line marks underneath, but it gives us this kind of warmth and this undertone to the painting. And again, very easy to paint over, where as opposed to like black or the grays of a pencil. So coming in and I have this burnt sienna color. It doesn't matter if you have what colored pencil you have, and just drawing some of these lines. Again, I'm really starting to make her a little bit more of a character, a little bit more illustrative than I am more realistic. So just mapping out kind of where her hand is, mapping out her face, the angle of her eyebrows, kind of the angle of her face as she's looking downwards. As you notice, when someone's head tilts forward, you're going to see a lot of the top of their head, and very little of like their chin and their mouth. And I think I might lift her head just a slightly more than what's in the photograph, just so you can see a little bit more of her face than what's in the actual photograph. But this really is just a really, really quick sketch underneath. And when you're traveling, this is a great way to sit on a bench, sit at a cafe, and just draw the people that surround the area. In these travel days series, I like to include, these are quick lessons. We're not going really in depth. So the end result isn't going to be, a really realistic painting. I'm trying to give you an idea that you can do these quick art sketches and these quick art prompts from home or on the go. And they're really, really great tools to have when you're traveling. And they're kind of my go-to. I'm not worried so much about the end results. What I'm doing is studying my surroundings. I'm studying the culture. I'm studying the people. I'm studying the feel. Every country and every city has its own feel to it. Paris in particular, there's a huge culture surrounding eating and food and taking your time and enjoying those moments. And there's something so beautiful about that. Anytime you walk out in Paris, you can see people dining no matter what day or time. This photograph really called out to me. She's got kind of a look to her. I love the like messy bun on top of her head. She's obviously studying or reading a book. She has her cigarettes right next to her, which if you've ever been to Paris, that is certainly a scent and a smell that comes with it. And in this photograph that I found on Unsplash, the right side of it's not very interesting, and it's more of a horizontal picture. So I'm actually going to take it and make it a little bit more of this vertical and combine two photographs. So keep that in mind as well. So if you're studying from afar, you could combine a variety of photographs. And if you're working from life, change the background, add things if it's not a very interesting background. Turn around, see if the building behind you has more interest, and start including some of those elements. It does not have to be exact to what you're seeing. You can combine different photographs, or you can combine different scenery depending on where you are and what you're creating. So that's a beauty of art, is that you take it in the direction that you want and you combine different elements. Maybe you like a certain architecture, you can add that in, or, a memory of a certain restaurant that you had. You can put that in and add that into this photograph, combining both a photograph from someone else and a memory from your own as well. So I'm going to be working here with my acrylic wash and my gouache, and then just a little bit of white gesso, and just coming in, kind of bringing in some skin tones, kind of a peachish, pinkish color with a little bit of white gesso added, getting that skin tone kind of defined, and then I'll come in with some other elements. Now, I originally had this green, but I think I'm going to work just in warm colors. Sometimes, having a warm and cool adds a nice contrast, but I want to make it analogous colors where they're all warm, they're all next to each other on the color wheel. And I'm adding just a little bit darker value, but I'm not going to add a lot of contrast into this either. I want this to kind of have that more feminine, romantic feel that to me embodies kind of Paris and this particular cafe kind of scene of this woman in this moment. So leaving out some of the contrast, the high contrast of the black and the white, and leaving out likely these cooler colors and just sticking with warm colors. So if I'm only sticking with warm colors and I'm not adding a lot of contrast, I'm going to have to rely on my deeper values to add the contrast. So using this kind of Julia's pink here, right against kind of a blush pink, to still create its own contrast while using only warm colors. And I'm using a brush kind of in between at this point, but don't be afraid to use those big, thick brushes so that you don't get really, really fine details. I like to have more movement in it, a little bit more expression. Keep in mind, this is more of kind of an illustrative feel. It's a quick sketch, a quick painting, so we're not going to get into a lot of detail. We're going to just kind of create the illusion of this or the image of this without you coming in and doing all of those fine details. The use of those big, bold brushes can help you get a little bit out of your comfort zone, make it a little more expressionistic and a little bit less realistic and less detailed as well. Then I have kind of a neutral color here. It's kind of like a Titan buff color, which is in my acrylic gouache, and just want to put like a neutral color down for the tabletop. I had kind of drawn out where the book was and where the coffee mug was, but I think I'll just paint right over it, and then I can paint those back into this as well. But I want to kind of create where I want the table to go and bring in this neutral color as well. So the key here is to kind of map out not only the foreground, but the background with kind of some muted neutral colors. And then I can come back in and add some more details, but just really kind of adding in the shape and the lines to add some interest to the viewer. And then in the foreground where I want the focus to go, I'm going to bring in that brighter pink color to kind of shape her body. Again, just, kind of defining where her arms are and that kind of thing without spending a lot of time. I originally had that kind of dark green color as my darkest value, and I'm going to come in now with more of a burnt sienna or a red madder, which is kind of just a warm brown or neutral color to start defining like her eyebrows and the darkest parts of the photograph. Now in the image you can see that her jacket is really dark, it's black, it's hard to define even where her arms are. So I opted to go for something brighter, and I might even change her attire as well. So take those artistic approaches, change the clothing, I put her face a little bit more towards the camera versus way down towards the table. Lots of different things that you can change the background, and that really can just make it your own. So let's talk a little bit about the Parisian cafes and the brasseries. You can find them on every corner. Throughout history, I have this romantic view of artists and writers and poets being inspired at some of these cafes. So creatives of all walks of life, sitting there, writing their next book, dreaming about their next painting, connecting with other artists. You hear of wild parties at night, places where they'd go during the day to get out of their studios. Kind of put yourself in that place. I find that when you kind of put a story to it, especially if you're not in Paris, you kind of need to look at a photograph and then make up your own story. By doing this storytelling through painting, it's a really great way for you to connect, but also to connect your viewer. I think that is why I was drawn to this photograph. Although if you look close, it looks like she is studying. Maybe she's a college student. She kind of looks around that age. But I imagined her more of a playwright or a novelist working on her next book. So decide what character you want to embody in your piece and just go that direction. So I'm coming in here. This is going to be my darkest color. So remember, I'm really laying off doing a lot of deep contrast in this one and instead keeping it very romantic and feminine with my color palette. So my darkest color I'm going to be using is this kind of burnt sienna or red madder, I think it is, for Charbon. And just kind of really accentuating some of her features here. Again, I'm using this kind of very illustrative look, making her eyes basically just a line versus coming in and spending a lot of detail and shadowing. I want them to kind of be defined in a kind of a line. And then I will do a little bit of blending, but I'm really keeping to this illustrative feel in this piece. Again, I wanted her to have a feminine side, so I selected the pink tones of the palette to enhance this. And some may spend hours. Let's say you go to Paris, you might spend hours at the Louvre. But today, let's spend our day at a quaint cafe, nursing cups and cups of coffee, getting whiffs of smoke from the surroundings, and nibbling on delicious French eats. So do whatever you have to kind of take you to that moment. Maybe you go out and get a cup of coffee, you get a macaroon, and you bring it back to your studio and you work. But when you are doing a painting, select a cafe that either maybe you visited, maybe you've been to Paris, and you have a photograph of it or a memory of it, or get inspired by online and decide your subject matter and the overall feel of what you want to portray. Again, the storytelling, keep going back to the storytelling feel. I selected a woman, again, researching or writing. I wanted to do this really illustrative feel. I wanted to be quick sketch, a quick painting to show you that, you don't need a lot of time in order to do this. And then, I could go back in and redo this piece as well. But I wanted that kind of romanticism, which I have, and I'm connected with Paris using my warm and pink hues. Take it in any direction you want. As always, I want you to get inspired by what is, really calling out to you in the moment. There is just something so incredible at Paris. I think there's a reason so many people travel there, the elegant boulevards. It is just this iconic place with these beautiful parks. You have the river going through. There really is just this romantic magicalness about it. And you want to just continue to stroll and walk around all day. It's endless, the amount of things that you could pack into your day. But also you want to kind of sink into the rest. I think the French culture does such a good job of, there's a lot of hurry and bustle, and especially being a cosmopolitan city. But then you want to spend some time and really take the time to enjoy your meal, enjoy your company, and you can't help but kind of just embrace that whole part of the French society and of the Parisian society or the Parisian culture. It really is just so charming. I really feel like I could spend an entire year living there and not even get to see half of what I would like to see. And that goes with a lot of cities, but Paris in particular. Again, going back to a lot of the artists moving there from all over the world and getting inspired by Paris, it really is an incredible place. And I hope to dive a little bit more into that in another class. But this is just a quick way for us to kind of get this illustrative feel or go a different direction and connect to a cafe. And maybe it takes you to your own local cafe and you can connect there, and maybe you can draw in your sketchbook. Maybe you could draw someone actually at the cafe. So I hope it takes you in a lot of different directions and that you get to explore in the way that you see fit and use the style and palette that fits for you. So I'm just continuing to kind of add some line work with illustrative work. It's really defined by a lot of lines. It's not a ton of blending, let's say with like an oil painting. It's really creating these kind of distinct lines, and you basically are building the person and the shapes around it by creating shape and line, and that's really how you accentuate like the face and the background details from one another is by using line and shape. So I let my paints dry, and I'm actually coming in with just some markers to just create a little bit more line work. This is a little bit brighter color, so coming in and just kind of accentuating some areas to create just some more movement and expression in line work with my markers. I am so thrilled you joined me today. I cannot wait for next week's Travel Day series, and please share your work and your cafe scenes.